So we want to go ahead and create a wedding film that utilizes the footage that we're collecting on the wedding day. We're going to need you to go ahead and make this video in the same format to which we create all of our wedding videos. We have a specific way we want them done. And my format of how to handle the editing process for the videos actually does speed things up a little bit, so it makes it just a little bit easier. Plus, it's always gonna, it's always gonna have us get exactly what we're looking for as far as the end product is concerned. So I'm gonna give you all the information. There's several steps we're gonna want to go through to go through the editing process. You're gonna want to follow these steps. The information that you're gonna need as far as login credentials, where to find the information, and the specific tasks that we want you to go ahead and do, and any information that pertains to the task will be sent to you in a Word document. This is more of a video just to sort of show you exactly what we're looking for and exactly how we go through the process. So the first thing we're going to do is step number one. We're going to go online and find those files and download them. What we go ahead and do from this end is we create an FTP file that will be a lower quality version of the files that we'll be working with, and that way it's easier for you to download them and work with them, but they will be all the files that we've recorded. What we'll do then is have you send back the Premiere Project file and not those lower quality files. You'll be sending back just the project file, and we'll be able to link them up to our higher quality files when we get them. So first things first, I'm going to show you in here where we have these files stored locally on our system in the 2013 video folder. You're going to be basically getting them off of the FTP, which will be the FTP directory that we send over to you. But eventually, when you get to the FTP directory, you'll see a folder called 2013 Video. Inside of 2013 Video, you're going to find all sorts of different video projects. Any one of these projects we will give you to work on, and inside of these project folders, you will find the movie files that are associated with that project. For example, in this folder, what happens to be my Miyano, you'll find all of these folders here. A lot of times we try to give you an audio folder. This audio folder will have the clean audio from the day that we've recorded separate from the video files. A lot of times these files will also have an _1 underneath them. What we want you to go ahead and do is download these files, all of them. And a couple things to note is if you don't see an audio folder, it means we didn't move the audio files over. The audio files are actually fairly easy to find. They are the ones that are labeled differently than all of the other video files. The video files are usually DV1, DV2, DV3, DV4, and in some cases they're labeled using a 5D Mark III file name. Let me see if they've got any. I don't have any here, but they're usually DV1 through DV4 or some sort of 5D3 Mark file, and you'll see tons of them. There are a couple of them that stand out, like for example this file right here, 000101_494. That is an MOV file. That is actually one of the audio files. What the program has done is it's gone through and it's actually compressed the audio and put it into an MOV file. Down here you'll also find more audio files, STE-000, STE-001, 002, and Zoom 001.mov. All of these are actually audio files that the program has gone through and they've compressed it to a lower quality audio file, and it's perfectly okay to use those files if we don't send you the audio files. As you'll see, there is an audio folder, and when you open it, you'll find WAV versions of the same file, 001, STE-001, 000, 001, 002, and 001 Zoom. Obviously, if you can get the clean audio from us, go for it, but sometimes we're so busy that we'd rather you just start with the MOV files, try to use the audio from that first, because that'll be perfectly usable. So these are the files. We want to copy them and paste them over to your computer, and that will begin the process of creating the file structure. For this one in particular, I'm going to show you one that we've created for a 2012 job called Rossmann. And in Rossmann, we've done a pretty good job of creating all the different folders that are necessary for what we're going to be doing. I think 2012, this one's probably a little cleaner. Let me try to find, I've started a new system here. Here we go, nice looking. So as you can see here, there's a good file structure. There's an audio folder, there's an encore folder, there's a final folder, a PPROJ folder, and a video folder. Inside of the video folder, you'll find all of the video files for the job. And inside of the PPROJ, you'll find all the project files for the job. Inside the audio is all the audio. Inside the encore is anything that we created for the disc. And inside of the final folder, you'll find anything that we put out as an output of a final product. You might just go ahead and create for yourself a PPROJ file for the Premiere Project file, a video file for putting all your video into it, and an audio file for putting all of the audio into that. and this will allow you to then copy and paste it in. How you handle the structure of your files doesn't matter to me. You can do it any way you want to. Eventually, though, it's going to open us up to a point where we're going to need to create a new project for Premiere Pro. So I'm going to create one here, and I'm just going to create a basic project called a test project, just to show you the process that I go through to begin this process. So I'm going to go to Project, leave it as the folder, and then call this thing Test Project. And I'm going to call it again Test Project. We're always working in 1080p 24, so accept that it's digital SLR 1080p 24 and then hit OK. This is going to open up a whole new set of files for us. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is import all of the files. So step number one in this process, we'll want to import all of the files into Adobe Premiere Pro. It actually may be step number 2. Hold on, it is step number 2. So step number 2 is to import the files into Adobe Premiere Pro. So we'll click File Import. We'll go to the 2013 file, these are 2012, but anyway, go to those files, and we'll import them in here. I'm just going to import a set sample of them, and I'll probably actually use another project to sort of go into video files here. And I'm just going to import a set sample of them. What I'm going to import is all of the DV1, DV2, and DV3 files. A bunch of them, just so you can see the process of importing the files. Obviously, you're going to have more files than that, but this is just a sampling of the files that we would be using. So this will import all the files in, and one of the things that helps to understand is binning the projects becomes the next step in the process. So step number 3 is going to be to bin the footage. So what you're going to want to do is create new folders. Once the files are imported, you're going to want to create new folders for each one of the segments of the day. In a wedding, there are several different sequences in the day. The first sequence is bridal prep. The second sequence is the groom prep. Third is the ceremony. Fourth is the introduction. So there's all these different sequences, and what we want to do is we want to organize the footage right away. So what I like to do is I like to create all of my bins right up front. Make it nice and easy. I'm going to create a bin for bride prep, create a bin for groom prep, create a bin for ceremony, create a bin for introductions, create a bin for photo time, create a bin, and I'll give you a list of these bins. Create a bin for first dance, create a bin for speeches, create a bin for parent dances, create a bin for cake cutting, create a bin for reception dancing, and oftentimes we'll have a bin called reception setup, and in some cases ceremony setup. Okay? So I've just created all of my bins. I'm going to save myself some trouble. I'm going to create a bin called audio, I'm going to create a bin called soundtrack, and then I'm going to create a bin called sequences. Okay? So in a couple of seconds I just created all of the bins that I need for the entire project, because everything's going to fall into those projects, all of those files. So with all these files, and I'll give you this list in the documents that we send over. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bin up the footage. Well, it's hard to bin footage when you weren't there. If you weren't there for the wedding, it's really hard to know what was what. But one thing that you'll know is that we use 4 cameras, and sometimes 5 total cameras, and they always get used in certain ways. In other words, if you know that the DV1 cameras generally don't get used during bride prep, then when you look at this, you can see it's a groom standing there waiting for the bride to come down the aisle. This is clearly ceremony footage. This right here, scrubbing through briefly, is also ceremony footage. So in DV1, I can cut these files using Control X and dump them into the ceremony bin. Okay? Good. So now we're going to go through here and note that the next thing that happens after the ceremony is photo time. This is where we take the pictures of the bride and groom, and as you scrub through, you can tell that we're not in the first dance, clearly, and if you briefly watch some of this, you'll realize that this is not the introductions, so that everything from here to here, because now I can see people are actually being introduced at the door, you can see they're coming in. So everything from here to here for DV1 is actually going to be part of photo time. So we'll go through and drop it into photo time. Okay? And then we'll go up here and note that DV1 here is used for the introductions, and you can open any one of these and play them out to see what they actually are. In this case it's an introduction, so we'll drop it into introductions. Okay? And then we'll continue watching DV1 because the next thing that happens after introductions is definitely the first dance. This is a speech. And as I watch through and scrub through, this is another speech. And as I watch through and scrub through the last footage of DV1 before it becomes DV2, we're going to go to speeches. So we're going to cut that out, drop down to speeches, and put that in the bin. The next thing I can see here is DV2. Well, again, with DV1 and DV2, the only thing we do is we use these at the ceremony and beyond. They don't get used for bride and groom prep. So what you can see here is clearly some footage from DV2 of the ceremony. So the DV2 camera is only 2 clips, and they're both from the ceremony. So we're going to scroll down, and we're going to drop it into the ceremony folder, and we're going to move on to DV3. Now the great thing about DV3 is that there's a lot of pieces there. But the great thing we know about DV3 is that we start using it at either bride prep or groom prep, and usually we don't go back and forth. With that being said, when you see DV3, all you have to do is identify that it is either bride prep or groom prep and put it in the appropriate folder until you get to the ceremony and the footage. In this case, I only copied a few files from DV3, but we can clearly see the girls getting ready. We can say that all of this footage from here to here is all bride prep footage. So we'll dump this into the bride prep bin here. Okay? And it's actually really simple to kind of know, and I'll write you some notes about how we use the cameras so you can better identify what they are in order to create a better binning system for you. But basically, you should be able to bin up the photos in about 10, maybe 15 minutes maximum if you understand how the cameras are being used. The next thing I'll do is I'll start to create the sequences, and most importantly, I just will go through and create the sequences that I know I'm going to use. I'm going to go into the sequences bin and start creating new sequences for each. So we'll go File, New Sequence, or Control N, and type Bride Prep. Control N, Groom Prep. Control N, we'll create a sequence for Ceremony. Control N will create a sequence for Introductions. And I'll give you all of these so you'll know them. Introductions, then it will be First Dance, and then speeches, cake cutting, parent dances, reception dancing, and a bin for, so then we do a bin for multicam, and I'll explain that later. We're going to create a bin for trailer, and a bin for feature edit. Okay? And obviously, if you're not going to make a feature edit, if the feature edit's not booked for this job, then we're not going to create a feature edit bin. But this is what we're going to do here. So we take all these and we drag them in and drop them into the bins. Now we have a sequence for everything that we're going to be using for. And this really is everything that we're going to do. Okay? So that is creating the appropriate sequences for each one of the things. So now the next thing we're going to do is synchronize the files using Pluralize. Now, if you don't know how to use Pluralize, then we can explain that in another file. There's another way to explain Pluralize and how to use it, but it is extremely simple. Ceremony footage, basically what you need to do is go into the ceremony and you'll find yourself, I'm going to open another project that's more complete. This will help you sort of see how we go through this process. We'll open the Rossman file, project file. We'll go into the Rossman project. Either one of these projects should be sufficient. We will not save changes here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the Rossman project, which is more complete than this project that we've played around with. And it'll give you an idea of how we go throughout the process of creating a multi-camera synchronized clip system. So in this case, I'm just going to create a sequence called Ceremony. Okay? And I'm going to create one called New Sequence. Create one called Ceremony, Introductions, and then we'll create one called Parent Dances. Okay, these are 3 samples. Obviously, within the document that you see, there will be more. There's one for Ceremony, Introductions, Parent Dances, Cake Cutting, and Speeches, and First Dance. In this particular case, though, I want to show you how we go through and get the files ready for Pluralize. It's critical to understand that we sometimes use many different camera angles to capture the same thing. In this particular case, we have the ceremony. What we're going to do is we use the same camera for the same thing. So all we have to do is take each of the file names and drop them onto their own individual track. Okay? So take your 5D3, anything with a 5D3 on it is coming from a Canon 5D Mark III camera. So as you go through, you can see all the footage named 5D3, and this is one's named DV1, and you can drag those and drop them right onto the video one. Okay? Next, we're going to look at the DV1 cameras. We're going to click DV1 and drag all the DV1 footage onto its own video track, video and audio track. We'll have DV2. We'll drag all of DV2 onto its own video track, and DV4 onto its own video track. And you can do this over and over again no matter how many video tracks you have. We also have some MVI, which are 5D Canon 7D footage. We'll take the MVI and put the MVI on its own video track. So all we're really doing is clustering them all together on their own video track. We're going to then take and listen to the audio a little bit, go into the audio bin, and take the pieces of audio that are pertinent to the ceremony. All you have to do is listen to the audio for a couple seconds and you can pretty much figure out where it's from.
It reminds us of the fragility and preciousness of all we hold dear.
So this is probably the ceremony. So we'll drag it in and drop it on its own audio track. Take a look at the STE2.
Over at Neola during long walks, all those sentences that began with.
Again, part of the ceremony, we'll drag it in. And we'll look at STE2.
I think I've been a bit brainwashed.
If you were to listen to this a little bit longer, you would actually find out that this is not audio from the ceremony, it's actually audio from the speeches. So we've dragged in all the tracks that we need for the ceremony, and we're ready to move on. We're going to go to the parent dances next, and we will usually not have any audio for the parent dances, but it's very easy again. We're going to take 5D3, all the 5D3 footage, and drag and drop it onto video 1. Anything with DV4, we're going to drag it and drop it onto video 2. And we'll now have all of our footages synced, all of our footage laid in the track and being ready for sync. Once we're done with this, we'll click File Save, and once we've saved the project, we'll bring it into Pluralize. Again, if you don't know how to use Pluralize, we will send you a video that shows you the process. But essentially what Pluralize is going to do is it's going to take your file, it's going to find these sequences, it's going to synchronize them using the audio inside of the sequences to get them laid in correctly, and then it's going to create an XML file after. Once the XML file is created, you'll then import each one of the sequences again into a folder inside of sequences called sync sequences, and each one of these sequences will then be synchronized. As you take a look here, you'll look at the ceremony sequence. This is all synchronized. It's all really clean. It's been moved over and shuffled where it belongs, and you can tell as you're watching through, all of these pieces of footage are all synchronized the way they're supposed to. The process of using Pluralize probably takes about 25 to 30 minutes to sync all this footage, and importing it back in takes only seconds. And you'll have all of your footage synchronized the way you need to. So the next thing we want to do is create a select reel, or cull the footage of the bride prep, groom prep, and the reception dancing. This is going to help us to create the base of what's important in our bride and groom prep footages, and it's going to get us the best pieces of footage out of what we filmed for the day. Now, when we film weddings, we generally film them with great purpose. We want to film them in such a way that it's going to be easy to edit them later. Don't overshoot anything, don't undershoot it if you don't have to, and just get what you need to do, get out, take it from multiple angles, and make it nice and easy on the editor. It doesn't always become the case. Sometimes we end up taking too much footage in, sometimes we take less, but we do the best that we can to make sure that the editing process becomes a little easier with the footage that we collected. Now, anytime that you look at the preps, you're going to find that there is a whole bunch of clips, many clips that are all vary in length from about maybe 3 seconds in length to probably sometimes 30 to 35 seconds in length. And these pieces of footage need to be cut, the junk needs to be cut out of them. So what we want to do is we want to start by clicking on each one of the images, each one of the video files that we put into the bride prep sequence, the bride prep bin, and we want to basically play out each clip and take the best pieces of those footages and bring them onto a select reel that we're going to call bride prep. So we're going to play out this piece.
Okay, so what about shutter?
And count for about 3 seconds before we click on the end gap, and we'll bring this piece of footage down here. We'll play out the remaining.
ISO, yeah. What do you want ISO? Oh yeah, so go up to 1600.
I don't even have to type anything in.
As well. So you can see here how she grabs the top of her dress. That's certainly a little bit, it's the same camera angle, so we can't use them back to back, but it's a little bit different than what we have here. So as far as the select reel is concerned, we'll clip it.
Oh, I had to flatten your back out. I can't even do that. It feels like the best it's felt.
And then clip it out and drag that piece of footage in as well. And we really don't want these pieces of footage to be any longer than 3 seconds. And in a lot of cases, we just try to keep the duration under 3. 2 seconds is usually enough. See, this one's about 4 seconds, so we'll just pull this piece of footage back. So what happens is that as you go through each piece of footage, you're going to find you're going to be building a select reel. And it's going to create a whole bunch of different clips from inside of all of these clips. None being any longer than a second and a half to 3 seconds long. Unless it absolutely needs to be. Of course, if it shows some sort of final action, that needs to be done that way. So when you look at the select reel, what you'll find is it'll look a little something like this. Let me get rid of this gap in here. So when you look at the select reel, you'll find it looks a little something like this. It'll have a whole bunch of clips from bride prep, no longer than a few seconds in length, and it'll play themselves out as you watch it, looking a little something like this. Okay? We like to keep the audio in and synchronized in case we decide we need it, but we do like to turn it off and volume it as necessary, and that we'll talk about in the editing process. But as you can see, it basically takes all the clips that we have and it allows us to see the video in a more select fashion. Now, some of these pieces of select reel actually needed to be moved around a little bit in the final editing process, but the idea is there when we start to put everything together. What I like to do at this point is I like to go through and do this for bride prep. I like to do this for groom prep as well, so that you'll have a select reel for groom prep. Okay? And that's what you see here in groom prep. And there's also a reception dancing select reel, which looks about the same. You'll see the select reel looks a lot like this, and it goes through basically doing the exact same thing, showing the dancing footage and only about 3 seconds of each piece of dancing footage. Okay, so this is the process of culling down and creating select reel from each of the bride prep, groom prep, and reception dancing footages. Once you've selected those down, the next thing that we'll be doing is we will be creating the multicam sequences. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So what you're looking at here is the ceremony synced, the synchronized ceremony file, and it's already been multicammed. Now, if you're not familiar with how to use the multicam tool, we have a video that will help you with that, but this is to kind of give you an idea of what the next step looks like in the process. Familiarize yourself with the multicam tool. It's very powerful, it's very easy to use, and it helps us a lot in our editing process. But if you take a look here, what we've done is we've gone into the synchronized ceremony. Now this will be after you've received it from Pluralize. Now you'll see we've already gone ahead and created the multicam here, but it's very easy to see what we did. What we did was we grabbed the video tracks here. I think we held the Alt key and grabbed up all 4 tracks of video. Now as you can see, there's only 1 track of video here. It's because we right-clicked on the video track and clicked on Nest. When we clicked Nest, it created 1 green straight piece of footage that was unclipped, and it was all the video compressed into 1 file. Then we right-clicked on it and we hit multi-camera and enable, and it enabled us to be able to use the multicam tool. Then what we went ahead and did was we ran through the multicam and we actually started playing out the multicam and then actually cutting it into the multicam sequence. What this was allowing us to do was to use the multiple camera angles using the multicam tool to create a multicam edit. This also required us to go in and cut back the excess footage at the beginning and at the end that might get stuck on there that just doesn't line up. In other words, sometimes we'll roll a camera to start recording even 10 minutes before the ceremony begins. We don't need that footage. The first piece of footage we need is the first piece of footage of people walking down the aisle. So I recommend that you shear this off, get rid of anything at the beginning that we don't need, and shear off the end, which should be the cleanest piece of footage that shows the last people walking up the aisle. As you can see here with this piece of footage here, if it will load up, it's the bride and groom as they're walking right up the aisle. Okay? So anything else beyond that that doesn't fall in line with this, we cut it off and make it nice and clean. Okay, and then what we do is we've multicam this all the way down. So as you're watching through this piece of footage here, you will see that the ceremony plays itself out and shows each piece from each camera angle. This is important to keep the audio files down here accessible, because oftentimes we will want to create some sort of clean audio file out of all of these tracks. What we'll often do is bring the volume down on, let's just say, any of these tracks here. We will just simply disable this audio. There's no need for it. It's not going to help us any. All we need is one what we call dirty audio track and one clean audio track. And sometimes if we don't have a clean audio track, we will need to use our best of the audio tracks. So we'll want somebody to go through and level out this audio to get rid of any excess tracks that don't help us with the audio, and try to focus mainly on our really clean imported audio track, which is down here. This is going to be the very clean footage. So level out this audio for the ceremony, and once you're done with that, your ceremony will be synchronized and ready to go. You're going to do that again for the ceremonies. You'll do it for the introductions. You'll see here. Again, notice that it has all the audio tracks in line. They're leveled out, volume dragged down where necessary, and then they're multicam so that we're looking at a clean edit here. I'm going to do that also for the cake cutting, the parent dances, as you can see them, as well as the speeches all the way through. So this is going to be the longest process. Well, one of the longest processes. This can take up to a couple of hours. You're going to spend some time going through and actually watching all of this piece of footage. But I think this step is important, because if you're the one multicamming this, you're the one that's going to actually get to hear these pieces, so you'll know what you want to use later in the feature edit. Very, very, very important that we're going to use the best pieces of the speech, the best pieces of the ceremony, and the cake cutting. So it's best for you to have actually watched this footage, and you might as well be getting something done while you're doing it. That's why we ask the multicam be put into this position, which is here basically in the 4th or 5th step. 7th step. So very, very close to the beginning of this process. So multicam these out, and then we'll be ready to start the feature edit. I think, yes, we'll be ready to start the feature edit. Okay, so we're going to be starting to create the feature edit here. The feature edit we want done a specific way. The feature edit for us, they all kind of have the same sort of revolving features. They all sort of have the same look and feel to them. We want them to all sort of look the same ish, if you will, and it should kind of have the same sort of way that we put them together. One of the things that we like to do is we like to open our video with a flashback, if you will, or a flash forward of something that's going to happen later in the day. A nice piece of audio or a nice piece of video and audio that really kind of opens the day nicely, and may not necessarily be at the bride prep, groom prep, or really at the true beginning of the day, but might actually be at the part of the day later in, you know, possibly the ceremony, possibly one of the speeches. Any one of those things is going to be where we're going to want to start out. In this particular case, we chose to start out with the speech. Dad had a nice speech, and he had a lot of good things to say. So we went over to the speech, and we started taking pieces of the speech that we really wanted to use. So after listening to the speech for a few minutes, we went through and we found a piece of the speech that we really liked, something like talking about, you know, I don't know who paid the DJ to make this go, you know, make me go fast. And it was in this section here that we decided we wanted all this audio and video for the speeches. So what we did was we used the C tool to cut and the Shift tool to shift cut all the way down the tracks, at the beginning of the thing that he said and at the end of what he said. And then we used the V tool to grab all these pieces, copy them, and bring them into the feature edit. Okay? We dropped that right here so that what happened was you would hear him say this in the beginning.
First,
up,
I want you to know,
talks about
whoever
it,
paid off
and
the
then what we do
DJ
is
to try to get me out of breath,
dip
to
out,
shorten the speech,
and we
it
go
ain't
ahead
working.
and show the opening title sequence. Okay? Each one's going to be slightly different, and with the speeches, what I like to do is I like to take 3 things that he says and open up the video with those 3 things. You can actually see that a little bit better in this project right here. So this is a great example of how we handled the multicamming process and how multicam helped us to create the feature edit. This right here that you're looking at is the multicam of the ceremony. So what I went ahead and did was I rolled through and I listened to the whole ceremony as it went through. And what I did was I cut, and I shift-clicked, and I grabbed each piece of the ceremony, all of the little tiny pieces that I wanted to use, and I dragged them over to our feature edit. Okay? And especially started at the beginning, where I knew I had sections that I wanted to use to deal with the intro the way that I want the intro to go. And so let me go ahead to that first part here. I think it's right in here. No, it's right here. This is where the ceremony synced is, if you actually go through here. And so what we did was, we pulled the ceremony in, and we used just a piece of the ceremony where he started talking about them coming in, and we showed a little bit of detail over the top of him speaking, but then cut away to him speaking to the bride and groom. Show the bride and groom, and then we showed their name. And then we came back in with a little bit of detail. Again, this is more detail of the setup, but what you're hearing when you watch this video, and I'll give you the link to this video so you can watch it, what you're hearing is actually more of the ceremony speech and what he's saying over the top of it while they're getting this thing ready. He's talking more, and then again we're dipping the black and dipping back into their title track. Finally, we're going to dip down and show a little bit more of the ceremony setup, piece of the ceremony, eventually giving us the opportunity to finish off their title sequence with their date. Once we finish off with their date, it gives us the opportunity to then time travel back to the beginning of bride prep. This is where the bride prep select reel comes in handy. We can actually take the pieces of bride prep and drop them in, okay? And then we can actually just kind of pick and choose which pieces we do and don't want. So this allowed us to go into bride prep and grab the pieces of the reel that we had created, copy them, and drop them right into the feature edit as they were, making sure to occasionally cut away from bridal prep, okay, and go back to the ceremony speech, the ceremony talking. We want this to sort of go back and forth throughout the process so that we're able to take the ceremony and spread it out a little bit throughout the process. We want to time travel a little bit. As he's going up to get ready, we're cutting back to the ceremony and showing them actually going through the ceremony process. And then as she's getting ready a little bit more and he's getting ready, we're going to go again. We're going to go back to the ceremony process. Going back and forth and using these pieces is really, really important to our editing style. And the way we do that is, again, we're going to go through and we're going to cut out entire sections of the ceremony, bring them over to the feature edit that we know that we're going to use. Take that in conjunction with the bride prep reel here, okay, and you get yourself the great beginnings of a multicam. Okay. What we do with the multicam at that point is we like to start with a score. What you'll find is that we've used an acoustic guitar score at the base of this that opens it up. It allows the video to open very nicely. So we want you to select from our FTP site. If you go into the cinema directory as well as in a soundtrack music, you'll find something called scores. And inside scores you'll find all these different songs that we can use as scores. Start with a score and use the score for at least the first minute or two of the ceremony and the preparation process if you're going to use the ceremony. Now if you use a speech, do the same thing. Go right through the first couple of minutes and use the score for it. Transition out of the score and transition into a soundtrack item like a song. Now we want to try to use the entire song from start to finish. I'm not a fan of songs that end in the middle. I don't like that. I'd rather have songs that end at the very, very end and begin at the very, very beginning. If you have to cut away a section in the middle and fade the song together, do that. But otherwise, in this particular case, what I did was I shifted the audio over so that the song ended right at the end of bridal prep, and then I used the guitar until the beginning of the song here. It made it work really nicely. The last thing that I did was I went back to another guitar score here so that it fit with my score that I used before. Instead of using a song, I used a score. Nice, easy, mellow piece of music that allows me to get all the footage of the bridesmaids and groomsmen walking down the aisle. Okay, that brings us right up to the ceremony point and brings me to my point of how to edit the ceremony. With the ceremony, you're going to go back to the ceremony sync section, okay? And you're going to actually take me back to the beginning of the ceremony to where they actually were introduced. Now here's what we did. We selected all of the footage of the introductions, cut it, and we dropped it into the full edit. And then what we did was we actually got rid of all the excess stuff that we didn't need. Since we weren't trying to keep the audio synchronized anymore, we were going to do it with a score underneath it. What we did was clip back the footage and cut back so that instead of it being maybe 5 seconds of this person walking down here, it was 3 seconds and 2 seconds and 2 seconds and 3 seconds. And we cut it back to basically shorten out the process of the walking down the aisle. This was important to make it nice and easy, and since we weren't using the audio, it was very easy to do. That brought us to the beginning of the ceremony. We made sure to use audio of the priest welcoming everybody, saying hello, and what we've done here at this point, especially considering we were using the ceremony to start with, is we've gotten in time. We've gotten from where we were talking about being ahead of time and showing the future, now we're where we're supposed to be. So I'm going to show a little bit of the priest talking. I'm going to highlight the pieces of the bride and groom. Anybody who might speak, I'm going to highlight them a little bit, use a little bit of their speaking, not much. I don't want to use everything because everything is too much. So I highlight it, highlight the second speaker, okay? And then I go ahead and I'm going to highlight the priest as he's talking to the bride and groom about their vows. Then I'm going to highlight their vows, and then I'm going to finish out the video, the part of the ceremony. I'm going to finish it out here with the end of their vows. Finish it out, fade to black. This finishes out the song and brings us to the point where we're going to do our introductions. The introductions become a lot easier. Basically, we're going to do the same thing we did with the ceremony. We're going to go into the introductions sequence, and we're going to highlight that introduction section. And we're not going to use the audio from the introductions if we don't have to. I'd love to use the audio from a song somewhere. But basically what we did was the same thing as before. Just the same with the intros of them coming down the aisle. We're going to do it with the introductions of them coming into the room for the first time. And as you can see here, it's a shortened version of it drawn in, and with a soundtrack over a nice clean audio file. Try to use the song that they use in their introduction. So in other words, you can actually listen to it, find the song, and then download it. This brings us to our first dance. So the first dance is usually about 3 to 5 minutes long, and first and foremost, I like to use a song for the first dance that is their first dance song. So going through here, what I'd do is I'd listen to a few seconds of their first dance, and as they go into the first dance, you want to be using their first dance song. So find it, download it, pay for it, we'll pay you back, email it with the file that you send over to us, but essentially use their first dance song. But staring at them in their first dance for about 3 to 5 minutes is a little bit more than I think anybody really wants to do. So what we do is we take their first dance, we let them dance for a few minutes, for about 30 seconds. Once we get up to a point where we've watched them dance enough, we'll actually cut away to stuff like cake cutting. And as you can see here, it shows a little bit of them cutting cake over their first dance song. And then it goes back to their first dance again. You see it here? Okay? And then we're going back to the cake cutting. Okay? Only to go back to their first dance again. Since so far in this edit we haven't used any of the speeches because we've used the ceremony's audio to tell the story of their day, we're going to want to go back and start using some of the speeches now. So we'll transition this into, again, we laid down a nice, pretty score that went down here. And what we did was we highlighted the speeches of the people talking to them. And we did that over their parent dances. Because again, if you don't want to watch them dance around for 5 minutes, you certainly don't want to watch them dancing with their parents for 5 minutes. So we went right from their speeches, and using the same song, we then went into their parent dances and highlighted that. Okay? So what we did was we cut it back, used the multicam piece, and then pulled it all the way along, and then finished out with the end of their speeches being the end of their parent dances. That brought us to our reception dancing sequence. Okay? which what we did was, this is where you want to get creative. This is going to end out their video and be the last part of their video, so this is the point where you're really going to want to enjoy the day, enjoy the footage, and sync it to the music. This is going to be important, and it's one of the ones where I think is really where your skill set is going to shine. This is going to take our select reel of the reception dancing, and what I need you to do is pick a song from our soundtrack section of our FTP. In the cinema, soundtrack music, and the reception dancing footage. Grab a song from the reception dancing and drag it in, okay, and use that song. We want that song to be used from start to finish, okay? Now edit and take your select reel and drop it on top of it, and then cut it to the music. So as the music beat changes, change the way the footage is viewed. And you'll see that when you look at this footage. When you look at the video that I show you as an example, you'll see how the footage was cut away. This is where I want you to shine. This is where I want your creativity to actually step in and really do some work here and make this reception dance edit something that they can really enjoy. Okay, that is the last part of it, and we always want to end the video on them dancing together at the end if we can. Okay, certainly last couple of clips we made, the two of them, so that we can basically finish out with them dancing and dip to black. Even if you have to take this piece from earlier in the day and put it at the end to make them dance together, I'm okay with that. Another thing that you might actually do is you might take the end of their ceremony, or you may take the end of their speeches or one of their speeches and bring it back in over this section here to create a nice end to their video. How you end it is up to you, but I'd like to see some creativity and see you end this so that it drops out and looks really nice for the bride and groom. That is pretty much the way we put an edit together. Really important that you go through. This is the actual full edit, the way it was all completely done. And what we want to do is send it over to us polished, clean, audio leveled. You don't need to do a color grade to it, but we at least want to see, you know, everything look really nice and smooth. Transitions where necessary. We don't use any cross dissolve. We just want dip to blacks and hard cuts where necessary. And clean audio. Fade these audios into each other nicely, in and out. When you watch our videos, you're going to see the quality of the product is strong, and we want yours to be the same way.